Hello, and thank you for joining us virtually today. We're going to be exploring how to create emotional success during times of stress. We'll use a psychological first aid model and self-care techniques. We want to assist you in building a foundation of skills that can be used to help you, your family, your neighbors, as you are staying home and staying healthy during this emergency response to the COVID-19 virus. This type of training would typically be presented as an in-person workshop with lots of opportunities for discussion, opportunities for group activities. However, even though our economy and society are starting the process of reopening, there are many businesses and organizations throughout Washington State and throughout our country that are still closed, and restrictions regarding social unity and physical distancing that prevent us from offering this information in person. Today's webinar will be recorded and it will be available online through Stille Valley Health Connections. We appreciate their support and partnership in being able to bring this webinar to the folks who are here and making it available on their website following tonight's live broadcast. If you do have any questions that come up as we go through tonight, please use the Zoom chat function to send those to us. At the end of the hour, we will try to take a few minutes to answer any questions that have come up. We're hoping that that'll be about 15 minutes, but we are prepared to go a little bit longer if a lot of things come up. For any questions that we might not get to, any comments or other follow-up, we will be listing contact information for both Rays of Hope and Stille Valley Health Connections at the end of tonight's webinar. We would love to hear from you. Bear with me just a second here. Sorry, I'm catching up with the technology. There we go. When you see these pictures, what is your first instinct? Do you want to grab some antibiotic ointment, maybe a bandage or a Band-Aid for that first person? Maybe get an ice pack for the person with that bruise. Those are both examples of medical first aid. We perform medical first aid to take care of immediate issues and prevent things from getting worse. If the person with the scraped arm doesn't take care of it, it could get infected over the next day or two. If the person with that bruise doesn't apply cold, it could swell up even bigger and restrict motion, or maybe even cause tendon or joint damage. Whether these injuries happened at home or somewhere else, we're going to treat them where the injuries happened. Sure, if it's at home, we might take that person with the scraped arm into the bathroom where we have our first aid supplies. However, for the types of injuries that we're seeing on the screen right now, we are very unlikely to call 911. We're probably not going to put them in a car and take them down to the medical clinic for treatment. We'll take care of them right where they happened. We would take care of them right where they happened so that that person can return to whatever they need to do with minimal disruption to their life. We also wouldn't need to call a specialist to figure out what to do for these situations. Most of us have first aid kits at home, maybe even a drawer or closet filled with antibiotics, ibuprofen, bandages, and other items needed for small injuries. Having the materials to take care of things means we can take care of ourselves and our family members quickly and efficiently with a minimum of fuss. If what we have isn't enough though, we would transport that injured person to a clinic or hospital. We would call 911 or do whatever else is needed to make sure they receive the right level of care.
Now we look at this picture. If you walked in and you've seen somebody that is looking distressed this way, what would your first reaction be? How would you treat this person? With an injury, when the injury is emotional or physical, do you know what the first steps are to help? What are your first instincts with this person? His body language tells us he is hurting, but the wounds are not visible. How do we treat this person? That is what we're going to talk about today. Medical first aid training teaches us how to be intentional in treating injuries. For many physical injuries, our instincts, reactions can help us keep them from getting worse, but we can also cause more damage if we do something that we are not trained to do. Psychological first aid principles have the same goal for emotional and psychological injuries. When we have a better understanding on how to use our words and actions, these things can make things better. Some of these things we look at today are likely to seem like common sense to a lot of you. That's okay. Psychological first aid is built on practicing what we are intentional with our language and our actions, and how to be empathetic when people are struggling emotionally. We want to introduce ourselves here. And so I will first start with saying, my name is Peggy Ray. I'm the director of the Arlington Community Resource Center. I'm also a grief counselor, and I am the grief counselor for those that lost loved ones in the Oso mudslide.
Hi, I'm Nathan Ray. I respond after disasters to provide psychological first aid and support for people who are trying to going out and doing the work. I'm also an instructor. I have a background in foster care and working with families and youth who are coming from places of trauma and helping them work through that and work forward. Both of us, in our professional and volunteer lives, work to help people who are experiencing or have experienced traumatic events and crisis. That's exactly why we're here tonight facilitating this webinar. Our cities, our counties, our states, our nation, and our world are in the middle of the largest emergency response ever seen in human history. We hope that you will leave this training with a few ideas of how to better cope with the stress of being part of that emergency response. The World Health Organization says a disaster is an occurrence disrupting the normal conditions of existence and causing a level of suffering that exceeds the capacity of adjustment of the affected community. In plain English, when something happens that's bigger than a person or a community's capacity, it's normal to have an adverse or negative reaction. The COVID-19 emergency is actually multiple disasters all overlapping each other at individual, community, and our greater societal levels. We'd like to explore a few of the negative things that are happening right now, some of the reactions that people are likely having, and then we want to start looking at ways that we can help ourselves and those around us to make things better. Since January of 2020, fearful language regarding the virus has increasingly come to dominate all forms of media, whether mainstream, social media, conversations on the phone, conversations via text, email, or standing 6 feet apart from someone in the grocery store line. The name given to the virus has mutated over the course of this. A lot of places still use coronavirus as the name for it, but the official name now is COVID-19. COVID-19 actually means coronavirus discovered in 2019. There are multiple types of coronavirus out there. And so for our discussion, we are going to continue to use the name COVID-19. Anytime that you turn on your radio, turn on your TV, go to social media, or pull up news of the outside world anywhere, we're being bombarded by reports of confirmed cases, deaths, and the spread throughout the world, specific states, counties. People are regularly seeing breaking news banners and graphics come across their screens. We're seeing government officials, such as our governor, such as our president, such as the people on their staff, who are daily giving press conferences and letting us know about COVID-19 and what's happening out there. As this continues to saturate all of our communication, it's heightening that feel of concern, and for many, it's heightening a feel of panic. Social media in particular is flooded with mixed messages. People are expressing their fear, they're spreading rumors, or they're spreading half-truths or misleading information. And unfortunately, panic and fear can be contagious. Other people are downplaying the potential effects of COVID-19 and railing against efforts that are meant to contain the spread. These mixed messages increase confusion and fear as people try to figure out what is actually happening and what they should be doing. The uncertainty that we have right now in Washington State, as far as how the restrictions are being lifted and what the timing is, add to our anxiety levels. Humans are accustomed to coming together physically and emotionally during times of emergency and crisis. There's even a phrase that we use to encourage this. We say, united we stand, divided we fall. Unfortunately, right now, we could actually use the phrase, united we fall, divided we stand, because of the contagious factor of COVID-19. Unfortunately, the physical separation requirements and recommendations can lead to a feeling of social separation as well. And this can be very overwhelming for adults and children alike. When businesses began closing, especially gyms, restaurants, bars, and nightclubs, where people typically come together with others, whether friends or other community members, this really increased that sense of isolation for many people. It left people feeling that they were on their own as they were facing their fears and challenges. Loss of income from a business, loss of income from your job, increases that feeling of uncertainty and fear. Without income, it is difficult to provide food, shelter, and the other necessities of life for yourself and your family, much less take part in non-essential activities and the other things that increase our quality of life. The graphic that I'm bringing up right now is very hopeful when we're discussing the typical use of psychological first aid model and techniques. We still think this is very hopeful, even with the nature and scale of the COVID-19 emergency response. The impact of the COVID-19 virus and our response to it is still ongoing and will be for an extended time. We don't actually have a specific time that we can look forward to yet, as our medical professionals are attempting to find cures, vaccines, etc., in order to help us and help our bodies defeat COVID-19. People continue to test positive, and we're still seeing spread on a regular basis. As a result, the fear and distress responses indicated in that large circle are ongoing. This is different than what we see with most disasters. Those are usually single events or have a time limit, such as an earthquake, a hurricane, tornado, flood, fire, the different examples that you could think of as far as natural disasters go. Behavior changes in COVID-19 are coming from both internal and external sources. Some people began self-isolation voluntarily over 2 months ago for a variety of reasons, such as weakened immune systems, possible exposure, fear, or other things that made them more vulnerable. Others, many of the people on this meeting among them, have been required to physically isolate because of the Washington State Stay Home, Stay Healthy order issued by Governor Inslee, or if you're joining us from another state, similar orders that were issued at different times by the governor in your state. In any disaster or crisis situation, most people who are exposed or impacted will have fear and distress reactions. Again, that's that large light blue circle on the screen. This certainly seems to be the case with the COVID-19 response. Some behavior changes, that next much smaller circle, involve working from home or not even being able to work at all, and so trying to find other ways to fill our time. We are likely spending a lot more time around family members and or roommates than we are used to. Close ongoing contact is a two-edged sword, folks. We may find ourselves enjoying conversation and activities together that we haven't been able to do in quite some time. An example for us is that a couple weekends ago, Peggy and I sat down and did a puzzle together for the first time in years. That was a lot of fun.
It was really hard.
But at the same time, close contact and extended contact with people who we're not used to having it with can also mean that little things that we used to think of as cute or adorable, little things that we didn't maybe even notice at all, may now become irritating for us because we're seeing them again and again, and we don't have a way to step away as well. In any disaster or crisis situation, some people will have behavior changes. In the current situation, most, maybe even all people will have behavior changes. It doesn't matter if you're staying home, if you're an essential worker, or if you're a frontline person such as a hospital nurse. You are likely have something that has changed in your life specific to COVID-19. That brings us to the smallest circle on our graph. These are the incidents of diagnosable psychiatric illness. After any major disaster or crisis, there are likely to be some people who actually form some type of psychiatric illness, such as an anxiety disorder, clinical depression, or something similar. This is generally a result of their experience of what they're experiencing, and then their coping skills being overwhelmed to a point that they're not able to come back without significant professional help. Because the COVID-19 impact is so widespread, we're probably going to hear about a rise in psychiatric illness more than we would following any other type of disaster that we've heard about. However, the good news is that it's still going to be a small percentage of the people who are impacted by COVID-19. So how do we recognize or identify some of the emotional reactions that people are likely experiencing? Most of the phrases on the screen in front of you probably seem pretty obvious as signs. But we'd like to call your attention to the one that says anger and irritability, because a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that as being a reaction that needs the same type of response from others as fear and anxiety, sadness and depression, withdrawal, emptiness, hopelessness. And yet, it is. Our first instinct with all those other things on the screen, just as in the first pictures that we looked at, is likely to try and help that person. We want to go to them, we want to say, I'm here, I want to connect with you. I'm here for you, and I'll do whatever I can to help. But what's your first reaction when people express anger? What's your first reaction when people snap or seem irritable? It's likely to back up. Maybe you can have concern about your physical safety. Maybe you just don't want to be around anger and irritation. Maybe your reaction is to snap back, get angry back. However, anger and irritability are generally signs that someone is feeling scared, they're feeling hopeless, they're feeling sad, or any of the other things that we're seeing on there. It's simply an outward sign that unfortunately does not drive us as humans to instinctively say, hey, I understand that you're angry and I'm here for you. Hey, I understand that you're angry and I'd like to find out what's going on so I can help you. I'm sure most of you can recall incidents with children in your life. Maybe with you, maybe with someone else, a parent, a teacher, another caring adult, in which a small child starts to have a meltdown. They have a temper tantrum, they maybe throw themselves on the floor, beating their hands and legs, screaming, crying, saying that they hate somebody, or just generally expressing their distress. Maybe you or that other caring adult in their life was able to go to that child and say, wow, it seems like you're really tired. Wow, it's been a while since you ate. Maybe we should get some food in you. They provided love, they provided connection. They let that child know that they are loved unconditionally and that that caring adult is there to help them. What if we could do that for the adults in our lives who are also having anger and irritation as signs that they're struggling? What if we could say, hi, I'm here and I'd like to help? If we can look under the outward manifestation of anger with a child, how wonderful would it be if we could do the same thing for an adult who is also overwhelmed and expressing their concerns? Cognitive reactions are things specific with the brain. When humans are subject to intense stress, our brains narrow their focus to what's needed for survival. We often refer to this as fight, flight, or freeze. Our executive function struggles to prioritize tasks. We may feel foggy, forget where our keys are, even though we hung them in the same place that we do every night for the last 5 years. That page in your book or on the computer now takes 30 minutes to go through and process when it normally would have taken 5 or 10. Those are not signs that you're going crazy. Rather, they're signs that your brain is overloaded and that your normal everyday coping skills are overwhelmed by an abnormal situation. Physical reactions are also common in times of stress. Our physical systems also have that fight, flight, or freeze reaction as they start shutting down where nerves are connecting, where our blood goes, and where the chemicals in our body go. Hearts beat faster, enzymes in the digestive system are routed to using proteins and sugars in preparation for running, fighting, or in other ways responding physically. This often brings on cravings for us. Maybe sugar, maybe carbs, maybe salt or alcohol. This is because our body is currently using or anticipates using a whole lot of resources in response to the fear signals that our brain is currently giving out. Indulging those cravings to some degree can be okay, but we do need to keep aware of their effect on our physical health. Having one donut for most of us isn't that big of a deal, but having a dozen isn't healthy for any of us. All the reactions we've looked at so far are primarily internal reactions with some outward signs. But as we highlighted earlier, we may see some major behavioral reactions that look like anger and irritation in ourselves, in our family, in our neighbors, our coworkers, people online, and people at the grocery store. Cabin fever is a term that people often use to describe that feeling of being cooped up without a way to get away from our sources of irritation, fear, or other things. Right now, people, towns, and larger communities are experiencing all kinds of cabin fever. We're 6.5 weeks into the stay home, stay healthy order in Washington state. And although we're starting to reopen some businesses and some areas of recreation, we are seeing real world examples of every reaction listed on this slide played out inside homes, on streets, and on our televisions across the state. If you're a member of any of the local community boards on Facebook or other social media, you've probably noticed that arguments are starting even more frequently than they normally do. Even people who aren't usually considered to be trolls are responding in ways that stir up bad feelings and keep things going. Maybe you found yourself keeping track of who is or who isn't wearing a mask, who is or who isn't keeping that physical distance when you go to the store. Irritability and hypervigilance are common stress reactions. Let's start looking at some ways to control our reactions as we interact with our family, our friends, and our neighbors.
Psychological first aid. We use this in a time of disaster or critical incidents that have an impact on the community, public health, and all of the first responders. This is a time where we really need to look at psychological first aid and check in on people. Find out how they're doing. Write them a letter. The other day we got one thank you letter and a birthday card in the mail, and I am so bad about writing cards and reaching out to those that I haven't reached out to in a very long time. But we have to make it intentional to reach out to these people and say, how are you? And actually schedule the time to listen to how they are, not just say, how are you? And then move on to a different conversation. Sit and listen with people. This is how we can help with psychological first aid. Check in. Well, the tools that we are teaching you today and some of the ideas that we are talking about, we have to let you know right away that this is not therapy. This is not to replace therapy. This is another tool of disaster stress management. We are encouraging you to use the psychological first aid model to build emotional success because it can help in the home with online communication and while interacting with others in the store and while taking care of others' essential needs during this time. We need to check in with others, but also check in with ourselves and make sure that we are in a place to help and that we have time for self-care. Self-care during this time is so important. What are you doing for yourself for that self-care? We are all, most of us on this call are helpers, and we want to help so many people during these times of the distress. But we also need to also take care of ourselves and look in at our self-care. Everybody needs a champion in their life. Well, who is your champion? What is your champion? Where is that where you can dump that stress and let it go? Do you have a place where you can do a debrief with a team member at the end of your day so you're not bringing your stress home? Or somebody that you can reach out to and call? These are very important during a time of a disaster or unknown states.
So let's look at some of this a little bit more closely. Some of you on the call may recognize the setting in this picture. Here I am sitting in the Darrington Community Center parking lot in 2014. I'm talking with a couple other people who were out volunteering and working in the response efforts following the Oslo landslide. I'm helping them process their mourning. They felt stressed, anxious, and were trying to figure out whether they had done well. I didn't have a couch. I didn't call them into my office. I didn't say we need to be formal. Instead, we found a spot in the parking lot where we could have some privacy, share a meal, drink some water, and talk. We're using this picture and this example because we want to show that psychological first aid skills can be applied in nearly any circumstance. This is a very natural place for us to be sitting during that time period. We're able to share the good, the bad, and support each other, build each other up, and encourage each other for the rest of the day. In the current environment, with the stay home, stay safe, this could mean chatting with family or roommates in the living room, the kitchen, or on the back deck. It could also be a phone call, a text message, or a video chat. If we're out getting groceries or picking up a to-go meal, we could take just a few minutes to have some genuine conversation with other shoppers or with the staff. I actually did that several weeks ago. The example that I'm thinking of, we had ordered from Olive Garden, and Olive Garden had just started doing their to-go menu. The workers weren't really sure what was going on. And as I sat in my car waiting patiently, I saw other people who were getting frustrated and upset and yelling at the workers. One worker appeared to be near tears. So I put on my mask, I got out of my car, and I went and talked with the two workers who were standing there talking to each other, the one who was nearly in tears. And I thanked them for what they were doing. I let them know that when they were being overwhelmed by the newness of it, they were being overwhelmed by how many people were coming to get food from them, and they were being overwhelmed because things had happened in the kitchen that created some issues around some of the people's orders. It was natural to feel upset. It was natural to feel sad or angry, but that they were very appreciated. I only talked to them for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but that was enough to completely change the looks on their faces and to give them a new sense of purpose. I don't know how the rest of their evening went because I didn't stick around once I got my order. I wanted to have a hot meal. But I'd like to think that I made a difference in their lives. So we'd like to look at some of the target outcomes of psychological first aid model. People who feel that they have control and safety are better able to function and then take action. Psychological first aid is not about trying to resolve issues from childhood. It's not about trying to create a 5-year plan for where they're going to succeed. What we're trying to do is help a person feel safe right now. Help them begin to operate in a more usual way and move them out of the fight, flight, or freeze reaction into a space where they can make decisions and start taking actions again. Over the years, we have responded in the aftermath of a lot of different disasters, both natural and man-made. With nearly all of them, we had to be aware of physical safety and comfort, as well as the person's emotional safety and comfort. The COVID-19 emergency has some very, very different elements to it. There's not a single site that was hit by an earthquake, a fire, or a hurricane. There are not physical dangers such as debris, mud, or broken glass that we need to be careful of. Instead, many people are fearing for their safety just by leaving their house. Others feel okay with going out, but they don't feel safe unless they see that other people are wearing masks and maintaining a 6-foot or more distance. And still other people are comfortable with being near family members and close friends but not around strangers. We're not here tonight to promote a specific level of precaution, because that's a personal choice depending on your own experiences. However, we want to ensure that we don't make people uncomfortable when our goal is to help them. So when we engage in conversation, it's often via phone or internet, much as this webinar is going on. But if we're talking with someone in person, we maintain that physical distance. We have masks that we carry in our car. We keep it at Peggy's office. We have stashed in different places so that we always have access to make sure that that other person feels comfortable and safe when talking with us. Now let's look at these strategies a little bit closer.
When we are talking to people, we don't want to assume what they need. So we really want to lean in and listen to the conversation. Listen to them fully without interrupting, but also it'll be key to listen to them and not start thinking about your response before they finish, because then you lose something in what they are expressing to you and their feelings. Really try, and when you find your mind wandering about something else, maybe what you're going to make for dinner or what the next project is, catch yourself and really just, again, lean in and listen to what they need. Ask them, can you tell me what you need right now? What does that look like for them? Offer them resources that actually are going to be helpful to them. That not something that you heard on the news, maybe, not something that you heard from a friend. Really look at those resources and check the material before you spread that information out. What is truly going to help people heal? What do they need right now in this moment? Offer up the suicide prevention lifeline if that's what's needed. Text home to connect with a crisis counselor. Look at your local resource centers. See what they have to offer. You have people who are stressed about so many things, financially, physically, employment. How can we help them ease that fear? And what are those resources that we're going to look at that are really, truly going to help people so we can stop spreading fear-based information? Most often, people just need somebody to talk to. They need an ear. Not every time somebody needs your input. Just leaning in and really listening to people, showing them that you care, that you're really listening. You want to be able to be present with them in the moment so you can have that emotional connection that they can truly feel. I see you, I hear you, I see you, and what you say is mattering to me right now in this moment. I am in this moment with you and I'm here to help. There's a big difference between a genuine response and a response that is, how would you say?
Cliche.
Little cliche. So if you say it, if it says, so it sounds like I'm trying to make sure your bills are getting paid and it's been really difficult. Sounds very difficult, then yeah, I don't know how any of us are going to survive this financially. Really listening and watching somebody's body language, normalizing the reaction to the situation. It might be difficult at times. It might be difficult to have them hear those words in the moment, but circle back to it. If you need to shorten a conversation, think about what they said, really think about your reaction before responding. Let them say, hey, or you can say, hey, that was a lot of information. I need to take that in and let me get back to you on that.
Oh, I'm doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, sorry. If we want to effectively help others, we need to ensure that we're helping ourselves. As Peggy mentioned a moment ago, it's important for us to know who the people are in our life that we can go to and talk to. Who are the people that help us keep perspective? Do you regularly check in with them? Do you have that friend that you can be totally honest with, even when you're feeling overwhelmed, even when you're feeling down and not wanting to deal with anything? When we practice what we preach, we show people that we truly believe what we are telling them. We watched a show called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood about Mr. Rogers a couple of weeks ago. I think it was the same night we did the puzzle. And one of the things that has stuck with me since watching that show was when Mr. Rogers looks at another person and says, do you know what the most important thing to me in the world is right now? And the other person took a couple of guesses and then said, I really don't know. And Mr. Rogers looked at him in the eye and said, you are, because I am here talking to you. When we are truly there for someone, and when we have someone who is truly there for us, it is amazing how empowering that can be. Although the two of us can go through and good, bad, the ugly, it's important that we have other people who we're able to talk to. That allows us to actually enjoy our lives together, because we're not always hearing about just the bad things. We're not always trying to deal with the stress, but instead we're able to go to close friends and family where we can vent, we can get advice from a different perspective, and not just dump on each other. For a lot of people who are staying home right now, that's a big challenge, because they may be accustomed to both people going to work, coming home at the end of the day, spending a few minutes talking, and then moving on to other stuff. And now neither one gets to leave. Or maybe only one gets to leave the house because he or she is an essential worker. Now when they come home, it's a totally different dynamic as far as being able to talk about things. When you are talking to someone and you're sharing, you're venting, you're seeking advice, it's really important to also identify what was good during the day, what was good during the interaction you had with someone else. Self-care to promote emotional success is work. We are not here to tell you that tonight you should go draw a bath, get a glass of wine, light a candle, and turn on Yanni. Okay, if those are things that help you, that's certainly appropriate. However, when we're talking about self-care, we're talking about doing the work that allows you to continue doing the work. What's on the screen right now are core guidelines that we give to people who are planning to deploy following a disaster to help with psychological first aid and emotional disaster stress management. No matter what your working or living situation may be right now, staying connected is vital to your emotional, spiritual, and physical health. When we have someone with whom we can check in, when we have someone who can remind us when we've been pushing ourselves too hard for too long, when we have someone who can bring another viewpoint to the issue on which we're working, that allows us to be more effective. It allows us to feel less overwhelmed. It allows us to take those physical and emotional breaks that we need in order to function and help others. While we're helping, so during support, it can be really difficult to separate when we have work and home life in the same place. Do you find yourself jumping on to answer emails at 10 o'clock at night, even though you've already put in an 8-hour day? When you're trying to work, are your kids, your pets, your roommates, are they constantly coming up and asking you to go do other things, distracting you from what you need to get done in order to fulfill your obligations? Sometimes physical boundaries can help us as far as our psychological and emotional boundaries. One example for us is that we've set up a specific room to use as an office. We don't work from our comfy chair. We don't work from a place on the couch. We don't sit at our dining room table. We have an area that we've designated as being a workspace. And when we're done working, we turn off the computer. We turn off our work phone if you have one. We deliberately make sure that we're shutting down just as if we had gone to a physical workplace and then come back. Once you leave your office at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever time it might be, you don't have that office computer beckoning to you, saying, well, answering one more email would be okay. Well, maybe we should just check on the status of this project. No, you've gone home, you've transitioned. We need to make sure that we're doing that for ourselves, even if the physical structure that we're in is the same for both work and home.
The one thing with that as well is just making sure that we have a safe place to take off our image armor. Every day we get up, we put on our image armor and we go out into the world, or if we're going to stay home and do our work at home, we put on that image armor. Right now we have image armor on, but when we are done, we need to have a safe place to be able to take that image armor off and be ourselves, really truly be ourselves, and really turn off the work phone. Don't look at that email. That is so important. It truly has changed the way my work is. I work at a resource center where people are in crisis all day long, and I'm dealing with that all day long. I have taken that time to debrief with my team at the end of the day. So we are getting that all out before we even leave our workspace. So when we come home, we can truly be with our spouses, with our family, and not worry about work. And I do not pick up my work phone again. I do not look at the email. But that's not was always the case. I was not like that. I was a worker bee. I needed to get everything done all at once and just go, 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 go. But now I realize, guess what? That email is going to be there tomorrow. That phone call is going to be there tomorrow. I need to take time for myself and for my family.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what's on the screen right now, is that reintegration period, that paying attention to cues from your family, that maybe you're too wrapped up in outside things and your family needs your time and your presence as well. Thank you. As our state and country begin the process of reopening, we need to realize that our capacity may have changed during the last month and a half to 2 months. Over the coming weeks and months, some of us will continue to stay primarily at home. Others will begin to return to work. And many who have already been working outside the home will have to get used to more cars on their morning commute, more cars on their evening commute, more people being out and about, more difficulty maintaining some of the physical separation that we've now become accustomed to. Things are not going to magically return to normal. And really normal is just a setting on the washing machine. We have no normal other than what our expectations are. We do have typical. Individuals, families, and businesses are going to be navigating a new way of existing. And our capacity to deal with issues is going to be impacted for a long time and going to be different than it was before the COVID-19 emergency response and the restrictions that we've seen over the last month and a half to 2 months. Although some of the ideas and techniques that we've discussed today have been targeted at helping during the stay home, stay safe period, it will be important to continue being intentional in our relationships and how we deal with others while we adjust to the reopening, while we adjust to a new typical. Look at what has worked. Look at what hasn't worked for you in particular over the last few weeks. We encourage you to intentionally continue practicing the things that have worked. And we also encourage you to intentionally reduce or eliminate the patterns that haven't helped you. When we focus on the helping things in life, we can build resilience for ourselves, our family, and our communities. This is how we truly create emotional success during times of stress. And I see that we still have a few minutes, which gives us the opportunity then to run through a couple of physical activities that can also help with your emotional well-being. The first thing I'd like to introduce you to is the shoulder roll. For those of you who are joining on video, I'm going to move just a little bit so that you can see me better, hopefully. So if you're sitting right now, I'd like you to sit up and join me. If you're on the phone, just follow my lead here. Follow the sound of my voice. Please put both feet flat on the ground. Put your arms in a resting position on your knees. When I say go, we're going to roll our shoulders forward and in a circle 5 times. Then we'll pause, and then I'll say go again, and we'll roll our shoulders backwards 5 times. I want you to think right now about how your shoulders feel, how your neck feels, how your back feels, and how your brain feels after 60 minutes of listening to us. And then I want you to think about that again once we've completed going through the cycle just 1 time. Okay, if you're ready, feet on the ground, hands on your knees, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pause. And now we're going to reverse that. We're going to roll our shoulders backwards 5 times. And go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause for just a moment. Compare how you're feeling physically and mentally right now with how you were before we did that exercise. I know for me, I felt a few cracks in my back. I felt my back muscles, my shoulder muscles, and my neck muscles all loosen up a little bit. I felt blood coming a little bit more into my head, and I feel like I'm thinking just a little bit more sharply. With that shoulder roll, that's something that you can do anywhere, in the car, at your office, at home, in the park, wherever you may be. It's not something that requires additional equipment. It's not something that takes a lot of time. I suggest that you do that exercise 3 times, both forward and backwards, with a repetition of 5 each. And at the end of that, it will be absolutely amazing how different you may feel.
And one thing too is to just make sure you're checking in with yourself. Really look at your reaction through this time of stress and the crisis that we're seeing even at the resource center, I know me, and I know that when I start getting punchy and I start maybe getting snappy with people or irritable, I know that's not me. Most of the people that know me know that. And I need to recognize that in myself. And through this training and really listening and taking that time for yourself, it makes a difference. I know that I can catch that in myself. Not always. Sometimes I need to have it pointed out, and I'm okay with that. You have to have your champion. This is my champion. But take that time for yourself. If it needs to go into your office, into a cooler, outside, walk around your car, just take a few minutes, do some deep breathing, do your shoulder rolls, whatever it takes to just get the icky out in the moment, and then come back to what you're doing. That is so important.
Absolutely. Taking those breaks is a key. That's one of the reasons that we have breaks built into a typical work schedule.
Use them. Use your breaks. Pay attention to your breaks. I make my staff close their computers at noon. There's no work from noon to 1. And a lot of people don't get an hour, maybe just a half an hour, and that's okay. But actually use them. You're not getting paid for that time. Take that time for yourself. Pay yourself for that time.
Absolutely. And I think we have time for one breathing exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and lead us through that. This is called 4-7-8 breathing. So we're again going to put feet firmly on the ground. That helps us connect and feel stable. We'll again put hands on knees. And this time, I'll lead us through a count. And what I want you to do is I want you to inhale for 4 seconds. And again, I'll count that. Then we're going to hold for 7 seconds. And then we're going to breathe out for 8 seconds. Now, if you haven't practiced this kind of breathing before, that may be a little bit difficult the first time, but I would encourage you to keep trying and do that as much as you can. What we're doing is we're bringing oxygen into our lungs and refreshing ourselves. We're holding it, and then we're forcing more oxygen out than what we just took in, so that what's in our lungs is getting replenished. So, feet on the ground, hands on your knees, and breathe in. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is again something that we encourage you to do 3 times in a row. And again, look at where your physical and your mental states are before and then after. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. On your screen, we've listed email addresses and websites for both Rays of Hope and Stille Valley Health Connections, so you can contact us with questions or feedback. Now, you may recall that when we started this live broadcast, we asked you to use the Zoom chat function to send questions during the webinar. We're going to take just a moment here to look at those, see if any questions have come in. We'll answer them to the best of our ability. And then if there's time, we'll also go ahead and open up so that people on the live webinar will be able to ask or comment themselves. I'm just checking right now. Wow, no questions. Either we did a really good job or they're going to come up for you here in a little while.
And this is really a new setting for us. Usually we do this interactively and we're able to walk around the room and check in with people and check in with people emotionally, see how they're doing, because we have shared a lot tonight and there's a lot of things that were brought up. So please, if you have any questions or comments that you would like to make after, maybe not on the live, if you're not comfortable with that, please reach out, because we know that this is a different setting. Usually we're playing games and it's all interactive, and this time you're really looking at two talking heads.
Now, something that I am realizing is that we do have quite a few people who joined us via phone only. And so therefore, you weren't able to see a lot of the screens and stuff that we were talking about, including email addresses and websites. I would encourage you, we'll be putting stuff out both through the Rays of Hope and through Stille Valley Health Connections to let you know when this video is available to view in the future. And if you'd like to see those slides, you can certainly do that. If you'd like to ask us, we can certainly send you a PDF copy so that you have the slides for your own use. But in the meantime, I am going to go ahead and read out those email addresses. And then I do see that we have 1 or 2 comments and questions that have come in, and so I'll go back over those. So hopefully I've delayed enough that you have time to either type or write things down. So Peggy's email is Peggy, P-E-G-G-Y, at Rays of Hope, RAYSOFHOPE, LLC.org. My email is Nathan at Rays of Hope, LLC.org. And Nathan is spelled N-A-T-H-A-N. Our website is simply raysofhopellc.org. If you'd like to contact folks from Stille Valley Health Connections, you can type in stillevalleyhealth.org. You can also contact Erica Coghill. It's Erica, E-R-I-K-A, at SNOCOPHD3.org. If you'd like to contact the director, Artis is A-R-D-I-S at SNOCOPHD3.org. We'd love to hear from you. Let's look at the comments and questions here. So the relationship, so a question that we have here is, what is the relationship between stress management and PTS or PTSD? So PTSD or PTS stands for post-traumatic stress. And if post-traumatic stress continues at a level and for a long enough time, then it can actually be diagnosed as a disorder, which adds that D on the end. What we have found in our experiences is that by employing stress management, by intervening with people, by helping them to reframe, by helping them to recognize or gain skills, then their stress levels are often reduced, and they're able to look at what has happened in a more positive and less damaging or negative way, which then reduces the level of post-traumatic stress that they're experiencing, and may even be able to help stop the length or the intensity of it so that it doesn't turn into post-traumatic stress disorder. Thank you for that question. That's wonderful. And then we have a comment about active listening and not jumping in to give advice. And yes, that is something that we absolutely emphasize. It can be so tempting to hear something, start to jump in, get ready to, oh, I'm going to go respond to that, and completely ignore what's being said. Peggy, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because you were giving some great examples on it.
It's really important to, fully listen, like I said before, But the one thing that I see people do the most, especially these days, is as soon as somebody starts to talk, the person's already anticipating what they're going to say, so it ends up cutting that person off and not letting them finish. And so Nathan might be assuming I'm going to say something as I'm saying it, but that's not what I was actually talking about at all. So I might get frustrated and just walk away because I know he wasn't listening. So to really have that active listening, leaning in, not interrupting, so important. Is there anybody on the phone that has any questions?
Yeah, at this point, we'll go ahead and open it up. We still have a few people who are with us on both phone and video. And I think you should be able to unmute yourselves, but if not, I'll make sure that it's possible. Okay, I think that you're able to unmute yourself if you go into your Zoom menu.
It should just be right down on the left corner.
Yeah, for us, it's in our bottom left corner.
It says you have to unmute.
I have to unmute. Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Give me just a second here. Let me see. Oh, hang on.
All right, there we go, maybe.
Okay, so if I go through, I'm going to go through and I'm going to unmute everyone manually. And then if you would like to ask any questions, make any comment, you can feel free to do that. So I think I've got everybody who's still with us able to comment or ask questions if anybody would like to.
All right, well,
Okay, yeah, I'm not hearing anybody. I'm not seeing anybody who's on video raising their hands right now. So again, we would really like to thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that you come away with a few ideas for how to help yourself, how to help your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, and our communities become a better place, and how to create emotional success even during this time of stress. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Hi, Jim Bob.